In my book, How I Rob Banks, I tell some of the adventures that I've had in my career as a physical penetration tester and social engineer. Today, I want to be sharing one of the stories from that book on the time that a client asked me to steal a helicopter. That's right, they asked me to steal their helicopter. I was really unsure about how to respond to this because it was a hospital that wanted me to steal their brand new helicopter. It was an Airbus Eurocopter H145 and it cost like 16 million quid. Now, I have some reservations about accepting this job for two reasons. The first is it's a hospital, and I don't like disrupting business continuity for any company that we're working with, let alone removing a life-saving implement such as a helicopter from them. Secondly, I don't know how to fly a helicopter. I mean, it can't be that hard, right? It's just get in, turn the engine on, whack up some power.
Speed and power, that's the solution.
And then just take off. Landing, a little bit more difficult, but you know, if you do it slow enough, it's just controlled crashing, and any crash you can walk away from is a good landing, right? I mean, the final thing to think about is that cost of replacing that helicopter. They just bought it, they'd spent like $16 million on it. It was crazy that they were going to let me try and steal one of these helicopters. Despite all those reservations, I said yes. I mean, how many times do you get to steal a helicopter in your life? I had no expectations of getting anywhere near this helicopter, and so I didn't really think about the need to fly it anywhere. These types of physical assessments always take a lot of planning, lots and lots of planning, and there is a long time frame on them. Criminals aren't going to tell you the date that they're going to come along and steal your helicopter, for example. So we tried to build in a bit of flexibility where we say, okay, we will attack you between this date and this date, right? Everything else, we have to really pay attention to all the laws, abide by all the rules. We can't do things that criminals do all the time, but we try and make it as realistic as possible. This job in particular was scheduled months in advance. Now, it was getting towards the very beginning of the date range that we had, and we actually had a client postpone some work for us. So that freed me up so that I could do this job immediately. So I turned up on site, I did recon on the ground floor to see how I can get into the hospital, how I can get through. Ended up going through some underground tunnels that allowed me to get into the back end of the hospital and come at the sort of the pilot's area from a completely different angle that most people would be expecting. After a bit of searching, I was able to find the pilot prep room, and I poked my head into there, and I didn't see what I was expecting to see. I didn't see lockers with the flight suits and the cool fancy pilot helmets or anything. It wasn't going to be like Clint Eastwood in the movie Firebox, where he goes in and he puts on all the outfits and he walks out to the plane. No one recognized him because he's got the mask on, right? So he was pretending to be the pilot. That's what I was expecting to do, but it wasn't the case. There was nothing in this locker. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna just have to go up there in a baseball cap and a t-shirt and face whatever is up there. I start climbing the stairs, and there is a lot of them. You have to get up quite high for a helipad, unfortunately. As I'm walking up, something clicks in the back of my head, and I think, oh, I hadn't thought of this. What if I do get to the helicopter? How do you open a helicopter? How do you start a helicopter? Does it have a key fob like a car? Like, I literally had no idea. So I was like, okay, I'll do the best thing I can, which is phone my friend.
Can you fly that thing?
Not yet.
Operator.
Tank, I need a pilot program for a B-212 helicopter.
There was me running up the stairs on the phone to my friend, and I'm like, dude, how do you get into one of these helicopters? Do you need a key? Am I missing something? And as he's Googling away, trying to find the answer of how to start a helicopter for dummies, right? I kick open the door to the helipad, and I'm running up towards the helipad, and I'm like, dude, don't worry. And I just hung up. Reason being is there was no helicopter. Wasn't there. I was incredibly disappointed and incredibly relieved at the same time. The helipad was completely empty. There was nothing to steal. So I phoned up my client and I was like, I'm standing on your helipad, where's the helicopter? And they were very gracious. They said, we're amazed you even got in there. How did you get past all this security? And I'm like, well, this is how I did it, but where's the helicopter? And they're like, well, you're right at the start of your date range, and we forgot to tell you that there's been delays at the factory and the helicopter hasn't been delivered yet. That's it. They didn't even have the helicopters to steal, so I couldn't steal it. But that doesn't mean that this was a waste of time. They got to test all of their security around that helicopter. And in my career that has spanned like, you know, almost 3 decades, I've seen clients mess up a bunch of times that have caused me issues. But this is the one time I think where client messing up has actually really saved my bacon, because I think if the helicopter had been there, I might have been tempted to try and steal it, and I think my day would have ended very, very differently.